Go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment for Thursday, May 16th, 2024. Rosalie, would you please take roll call?
Chairman Loper,
Present.
Vice Chairperson,
Present.
Member Carden,
Present.
Member Clapp,
Present.
Member Ward.
Present.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Full quorum. That's awesome. All right, proceed with the announcements. One, this meeting has been noticed in accordance with the open meeting law of ARS 38-431. B, agendas are available within 24 hours of each meeting in the Maricopa County Planning and Development Office and are also available on the Planning and Development website 1 week prior to the hearing at www.maricopa.gov/planning. With respect to the hearing process, cases will be considered in the order they appear on the agenda unless otherwise agreed to by the board. For each case, the applicant will be given a set amount of time to present their testimony. Any witness wishing to give testimony in a particular case shall notify the board of such desire. This shall be done by filling out a speaker's request card if you're here in attendance, and you get those from Rosalie, and she's right there to my left, and Rachel's holding them up in the air. Or registering a desire to comment on the published agenda if you're online. Also, at the appropriate time for each case, the chair will ask those attending in person and online who wish to speak to a case to raise their hand by clicking on that icon on the webinar screen. And again, if you're wishing to speak, fill out one of these cards, hand it to Rosalie. Staff will provide the chair with the names and persons who have registered and noted a desire to comment, and those registered participants who have raised their hand. The chair will call on each named participant one at a time. Such testimony shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. However, the actual amount of time allowed for testimony shall be at the discretion of the board chair. And I do note a number of slips, so I may limit those comments to 2 minutes each. The chair will conduct a hybrid in-person and virtual public hearing according to the bylaws and according to the rules established by the chair regarding public comment. Votes will be done by roll call vote only, and the chair will verbally identify the specific board members responsible for all motions and seconds. Moving on from the announcements to the minutes from the last board meeting of April 18, 2024. Are there any comments, changes, or additions? Seeing none, those are considered approved. We have nothing under the code compliance review. We'll move on to the regular agenda, BA 2024-010. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. Variance case BA 2024-010, the Kriegel property located in Supervisor District 1. The subject property is located at 12225 and 12247 South Gilbert Road on portions of APNs 304-23021F and 304-23021P, located approximately 250 north of the northeast corner of Gilbert Road and Warner Road in the Gilbert area. The subject site is zoned C3. The applicant is proposing to locate a marijuana establishment in an existing building on site. The applicant has provided a meets and bounds description of the subject area that will result in a consolidation and lot split of the two subject parcels if the board grants the variance requests. The request is for a proposed distance separation from a marijuana establishment to a school of 1,361 feet, where 1,500 feet is required per Maricopa County Zoning Ordinance, as well as proposed distance separation from a marijuana establishment to a public park of 507 feet where 1,500 feet is required. The site is zoned C3 and is host to several established businesses. Marijuana establishments are a permitted use in this zone as long as the site is separated from certain other uses within a set minimum distance, 1,500-foot distance from the closest exterior wall of the subject building to the closest boundary line of any affected parcel, regardless of jurisdiction. The building on the proposed site fails to meet the required separation distance from both a school and a park. The school in question is the Greenhouse Montessori School located on APN 304-23020Z, highlighted in green to the north, and to the north of the site of a public park owned by the town of Gilbert, located about 475 feet southwest of the site, highlighted in red. One memo of opposition comes from the town of Gilbert. Per the town's response, a marijuana establishment would not be permitted in a commercial zoning district, nor would the subject site meet the 1,000-foot distance requirement the town requires from residential zones. The mayor has also provided a memo of opposition to the request as well. No new peculiar condition has since been brought by the applicant with this previously denied request. A variance is not warranted as the commercial site is host to several established businesses. The board must be able to identify what peculiar condition of the property exists now that did not exist when the case was last heard. The Board of Adjustment previously denied the similar request on September 15, 2022 under case number BA 2022-021 by a vote of 3-1. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Great presentation. Are there any questions of staff at this time by any of the board members? All right, seeing none, go ahead and open the public hearing. Is the applicant or applicant's representative here?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. For the record, Bill Lally with Tiffany Bosco, 2525 East Camelback Road here today representing the applicant. We do have a couple slides here. Let's see if we can load. Perfect. Daniel did a great job of giving some of the history. And I think to give a little bit of history, especially for any new members, we were here multiple years ago on this basically the same request. And at the time, we had not received much input from the school that we were varying from. And at the time, we had made some arguments, I think, in the hearing, and Mr. Peck corrected me correctly, that I was going down the path of potentially an interpretation. And so the hearing, I think today, is not going to focus on any sort of comparison to try to interpret something in the code. It's just going to be justifying sort of the variance request today. But noteworthy, we've done a lot of homework and outreach since then. So again, as notified by and was described by Daniel, the site is in probably one of the most busy commercial intersections in the entire East Valley. It's right in the heart of Gilbert. It's a mile away from Chandler, a mile and a half away from Mesa. So this is sort of in an area where all three jurisdictions reside. Again, Daniel did a good job of describing the use and the property. If you look at the aerials, you'll see it is surrounded on all four sides by commercial uses. We are in C3, which is in Maricopa County, one of the highest commercial uses. It's not industrial. Gilbert does require these facilities, cannabis facilities, only in industrial. And I'll show you here in a moment why that's almost impossible to locate in the town of Gilbert. The facility today, give you a picture of sort of what it looks like today. The Mint company will come in and do quite an overhaul of the facility. And if you've seen other facilities around the valley, they've done an amazing job of cleaning up existing facilities. When you drive by, they look like, you know, any other high-end retail establishment for the area. And so I think the before and after situation is and look is going to be much upgraded. Again, as Daniel indicated, this is sort of the location. You can see how busy the area is. And again, it's noteworthy that you've got really the confluence of two of the largest major arterial roads in Gilbert. You have a canal that separates the commercial use from any of the residential. So the impact, we believe, on the adjacent properties, and probably most noteworthy to the park to the south, is the enormous roadway. And again, I think the code, the intent of the code, which is part of the test, the intent of the code is to separate cannabis facilities from sensitive uses, whether it's a park or a school or a church. And you have to look at the proximity of those uses to the cannabis. In this case, to the south in the park, and we'll get into it a little bit further, this is a major commercial intersection. They, you know, any sort of commingling of the two sites, pedestrians or have you would have to cross one of the most major intersections in Gilbert to attend the park, or vice versa, anyone commingling between the two. To the north, you'll see that the the county island is adjacent to the school that we'll get into in a moment. This is a map that kind of demonstrates the jurisdiction in the area. And when we talk about peculiar circumstances, not only do we have an odd shaped property, and we can go back to the parcel size and show you why it's odd shaped, why the regional canal that came through and split this commercial parcel has created a peculiar shaped size property, which, as we know, the test is not just the nature of the property in and of itself, but really how it applies in the area. If you look, you'll see the jurisdiction outlined in red to the north is Mesa. The blue dots are other facilities located in Mesa. This is the jurisdiction for Gilbert. So what you'll see is practically no facilities in Gilbert. There's one right on the border on the west next to Gilbert. So the Gilbert Code in and of itself requires such high level of industrial zoning and separation that there's almost effectively, and we went into the narrative, and I know it was a lengthy narrative, but effectively no other locations in the town of Gilbert to locate a facility. And I think that was probably intentional. I think when the voters passed this initiative years and years ago, there was a little bit of uncertainty and nervousness around the valley with jurisdictions like, wow, this use potentially could be a difficult use to manage. And I think over the last 15, 20 years, I mean, I think it's proven to be a use where there are good operators making nice improvements to properties, have great security, and actually have upgraded a lot of these areas that were theoretically run down. And I say run down because these uses were pushed into either industrial or high travel commercial uses. So these facilities are forced to be in not really a retail setting, but more of an industrial setting. So in Gilbert, they've effectively, through their laws, have prevented these facilities. So this area is well underserved for this type of use. This area does need these kind of facilities. And I think over the years, people have figured out that this type of product does have a medical need, and it can be done safely. And there wasn't the large law enforcement fear. You'll hear from some folks today that have a law enforcement background that will tell you their experience in this industry, which is there isn't the kind of law enforcement problems in the area. So then you go down to kind of commingling sensitive uses, which is what the application's here today to talk about. The school to the north was probably, in my perception from the last hearing that we had, probably the biggest unknown. And since then, and it's been a couple years since we've been in front of you, we've spent a lot of time with the owners of the school to better understand what their program is like. And unfortunately, we hoped the owner was going to be here today. It's a school day, so today was not a break. She was hoping to be able to be here. She does have a strong letter of support in the record, and it's been in the record since January. We've had numerous conversations with her about trying to get her here to speak. It's a small school. She runs it. It's a private business. It's hard for her to break away from Gilbert and come here. But she's articulated in emails and letters of support that she is in support of this use. And so when you talk about the impact on the community, we read through a lot of the cases that came before you, and I've seen a lot of cases in other jurisdictions, and rarely do you see the use that you're varying from sign a letter of support. That's pretty rare, because those are usually churches or schools or parks. Now, again, I know Gilbert wrote a letter as it relates to the park, but the school has small children there, and the school is running a business. And the impact on the school, if this was a negative impact, would be an impact on the kids and or her business. So the fact that there's a letter of support in the record, and the fact that we've spent 2 years working with them to better understand their program, and vice versa, they better understand our program, I think is a significant change in posture of this case from where we were 2 years ago. Again, if you look at this sketch that was included in the narrative, it was only included in as much to show that if you got in your car and you hit the little tachometer and then you drove to the front door of the school, it's actually about 1,600 feet. Now, the county measurement that we have today is a little over 1,300 feet from door to parcel line. So we are very, very close in the real world of being past and beyond the real 1,500 feet. Now, that's not how the county measures it, but I think it's noteworthy to say, if you got in your car and you drove from our facility to the school facility and parked and went in the door, you are beyond the 1,500 feet. And I think it's worth noting that the Montessori school to the north are small children. They are small children, ages basically 6 and under. I mean, this is not a elementary school where they're getting on their bikes and they're kind of going off into the neighborhood and maybe there's a chance of commingling. It's a small private Montessori school where the parents come pick up the children and vice versa. So we wanted to make sure that we understood the nature of that very much so. So any chance of commingling of these two uses doesn't happen. The park to the south. Now, you read the letter from Gilbert. You know, they believe this is a prized part of their inventory. There's a packet that was handed out today. There were a couple slides, I think, and pictures of the park that were excluded from the staff report. It shows the nature of the park. So in reality, this park is a 6,000 square foot parcel that was left over on an old county plat. It's smaller than most of the lots in the subdivision. It has overgrown weeds, no parking lot, really no way for the community to really visit this park and use this park. This slide shows visits. And again, we spent the last 2 years doing our homework to kind of upgrade this application. And we had a consultant go out there over 14 times, visit the site, stay at the site, take a survey to see if anyone was using the park. And on all 14 times, and this was November and October, this is nice time of the year. This wasn't August, you know, at 5:30. This was in the nice time of the year. Every time we visited, whether it was noon or after school or on the weekends, no one was ever there. So if you look at the nature of the park, overgrown weeds up to your knees, no parking lot. We visited it 14 times, no one's ever using it. It's hard to believe that this is the type of park that deserves the type of protections that the code is intending for. Now, if we were across the street from Gilbert's large park with a parking lot of 50 or 100 cars and there's kids running around and we're 500 feet away from that, absolutely, all day long, that's a different story. But I think in this case, and I'm assuming that the letter from Gilbert talks about the park because in fact, this is a type of use that they probably just don't want anywhere in their city because the code certainly as applied seems so. So let me go to the next slide here. Again, we spent the last 2 years talking to the community, talking to the stakeholders who are most impacted, the school, talking to neighbors in the area, soliciting support, talking to organizations that have a background in law enforcement in the area, groups that are familiar with our client's operation, other nonprofits in the area that rely, and again, this is a quasi-medical type of product. This is just like hopefully having a CVS in the area. Some people use it as a medical use and they want to have that use in and around their community in a convenient area. So we solicited over 100 letters of support, but again, most notably is the letter from the Montessori school that we're varying from. All of that is in the record. There probably are going to be some questions, but as you can see, the surrounding jurisdictions are very, very close. Those surrounding jurisdictions have allowed these types of uses time and time again, either through this Board of Adjustment, Maricopa County Islands, or elsewhere in the city. And there hasn't been any negative impact in those particular areas. I think there's a little research in the application. I don't want to dwell on it, but a case that was recently approved just earlier this year where we were, feet from, or it wasn't my application, but approved here where you were feet from a church and school, and probably half of the distance that we're talking about today. And Wayne will remind me, precedence doesn't matter. Precedence is not part of the test, and I would agree with Wayne. That is true, but those are the facts. Those are the cases that are getting approved out there, and those are the cases that the community feels are appropriate. And so we believe that if you're going to look at sort of the other cases that seek support in the area, you just can't ignore some of that past precedents. In summary, we believe we do meet the test. We believe we meet the test in that it's a peculiar sized property, and it's designed and it's peculiar because there's a large regional canal that cuts the property or historically cut this property off. So it's an odd shaped property. It's also peculiar in as much as that the way the Gilbert Code is designed There's not any facilities in the entire town of Gilbert other than the one. They have to be located in an industrial area, and there's just a very devoid of industrial property. So it's peculiar in the nature of where it sits and the surrounding circumstances and the size. And I think if you take that, none of that is, the fault of the owner. The regional canal was not designed by the owner. The Gilbert Code wasn't designed by the owner. So none of this was the fault of the owner. And I think that we are following the intent of the code. And the intent of the code is when there is a sensitive use nearby one of these facilities, you got to have a buffer. And we've described to you that we believe the most sensitive use, which is the school, supports the case. And we would also argue that the other use that we're buffering from, which is a city park, really lacks a lot of the characteristics of the type of park that really deserves enhanced buffering. So, Mr. Chairman, board members, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Member Cardin?
Thank you. Mr. Lally, thank you. That's truthfully a very, very good presentation, and I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge I saw the many letters of support that were given, including that from the Montessori school, and I think that's significant. I have two questions for you, but I hope you'll bear with me just to kind of lay it out here so you can understand where I'm coming from. It's significant to me, and I believe it's generally been significant to this board when we have letters of opposition, also recognizing there's a lot of letters of support. In this case, you have, as has been pointed out, a letter of opposition from the town of Gilbert, the principal planner, as well as the mayor. And so that's significant because the presence of this establishment will mostly affect those in Gilbert. I'm sure others from other jurisdictions will come and use the establishment as well, but it'll affect those in Gilbert and those in the surrounding area. And so Gilbert's making it clear we don't want it here, as you pointed out. In my mind, when you have significant opposition that way, especially from an elected, official who ideally is representing the town there, the people there, it seems you have a really high hurdle where it needs to be a slam dunk case for meeting the statutory test. And I went back and looked at the other cases that you included, and I did note in those that either there was no opposition or even there was support, even municipal support. And so I think that just highlights how at least I, and maybe others on this board, give some weight to that support and opposition. So my two questions are, have you had any conversations with the town of Gilbert and tried to convince them of all the things that you're saying here? And number two, do you have any additional comments, although you've already given really a great presentation, any additional comments on the analysis I just kind of threw out
there? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Board Member Cardin, clearly you've identified the crux of the case, and not very often have I seen the mayor of a jurisdiction comment on a variance, a zoning case, or anything. Probably the first time. So it is extremely noteworthy that this is happening. And so to answer your first question, we had, obviously this application gets routed over to the town. It did the last time. We had conversations with them the last time. We understood their position. That was routed to them this time. I guess the part two of that is the comments are, they are strongly advocating for the fact that they believe that this is an important park for their inventory. And when I read that, but then I look at what has been the history of these facilities in the town of Gilbert over many years, meaning that they've almost exclusively excluded them through either their own zoning code or lack of available sites. I wonder if, since this park on its face, the merits and the characteristics of this park, to me, and I think to the average person, does not necessarily follow along the narrative that the town has put forth, that this is a very important asset for their Parks and Rec department. The only thing I'm left to do is potentially provide evidence that it doesn't. And so if you look at the photos of the nature of the park, the fact that it's been, it's never had any improvements for parking, very little public access to it, and going above and beyond and visiting the site 14 times. Now, I think Member Cardin, had any of that not existed, I would take the letter from the town on its face value and say, yeah, no, I get it. It's an important asset. You're putting public monies into this park and utilized by the citizens of Gilbert quite often. And so we have to find a way to mitigate that or provide justification around that. But I just don't find merit in the claim that this is an important part of their city park inventory, and that this, and then I guess secondly, I would say, even if it were, this is probably the busiest intersection in Gilbert. And so the impact of our facility across the busiest intersection in Gilbert, I just don't see how the negative impact would be. There's a Circle K on the same intersection. Gas stations, C-stores do receive a lot of interesting nighttime crowds. So this intersection, if this park were so detrimentally impacted by some of the C3 uses that are already existing, I think we would know about it. And I think this use is not going to add to the impact. So even if we take face value that this is an important park, I would argue, Member Cardin, that because we're so far away in a commercially, high commercial zoned area and across a massive intersection, the impact, I just don't see any sort of impact on the usability or the maintenance or the viability of this park.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the applicant by any of the board members? All right, hang tight. May have some more for you in a minute and offer you a chance for rebuttal if necessary. I do have speaker request cards from 4 persons. 3 indicated support and that they wish to speak. 1 said they wish to speak but didn't indicate if they're in support or not. So I'll start with those. I'll start with the one who didn't indicate support or opposition. Joel Reza? If you could just provide your name for the record, please.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joel Reza. So I've been with the Arizona Department of Corrections for 25 years now. And before that, I was the United States Marine, which served 2 tours of combat. I'm also the state president for Shotgun Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. And we're a nonprofit organization who supports not officers who have passed away in the line of duty, but have gotten hurt in the line of duty. As a matter of fact, about 2 years ago, we supported Officer Arana from Gilbert PD when he got hurt on the line of duty, and we actually raised a good amount of money for him. But with that being said, is my background and what I do for a living, it goes with the PTSD aspect, and it's what we try to help officers with and try to explain to them how to help them out. For the longest time, I'll get headaches. I wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares. I do all that you see or watch on TV. But the funny thing is that my VA medical assistant would tell me, hey, I can give you a card for medical marijuana. And this is way before it was even legal. And my mindset, I was, law enforcement for so long. I was military. I was like, I don't need marijuana. I don't need it. Once it became legal here in Arizona, I was like, well, you know what? I talked to my medical provider and at the VA, and I said, I think I'll try it. And it has actually helped a lot. And not just with me, but with other officers that I know that we've helped them out. That I know a lot of people don't like talking about PTSD. They don't like saying they have a mental condition. But this is one way to help out officers who not just hurt in the line of duty, but have been, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been bothered by what we do. It's not an easy job we do, but a lot of the officers do have, it bothers them, it hunts them down, and it helps a lot. when it comes to PTSD, when it comes to medical marijuana. I'll be the first to admit, when I first heard about this, I thought it was the craziest thing in the world was Arizona legalizing it. I felt like I was breaking the law just going to take a tour with mint. And to me, it felt weird because for the longest time, it's not something that I would do, that I, just to get up and, hey, I'm gonna go to the dispensary today. But I've talked to many officers, to include a lieutenant from Gilbert PD, 2 officers and a sergeant, and they're all up for the idea of a dispensary coming up in Gilbert. They think that it would alleviate from the pushers who come down, the drug dealers who come over to Gilbert, because everybody else Mesa has, I don't know how many dispensaries. So they're all moving down to Gilbert to push their drugs. And they think it's a great idea. That way they'll have to go find somewhere else to go push their drugs now, as opposed to just in Mesa or in Gilbert. So as far as the law enforcement aspect goes, the officers that I've talked to, they're liking the idea. They'll welcome any dispensary that comes around, not just Mint. And I would like to thank Mint they've supported us in a lot of our rides and helped a lot of our fellow members in our club. So that's about it. I had a speech, but I completely forgot it, and here I am. So any questions?
Any questions of the speaker? None. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service and your organization. God bless.
Thank you.
Move on to the next, and I'm putting you down as in support. Is that correct? Okay. Next speaker is Ashley Plum, indicates she wishes to speak and is in support.
Hello, I'm Ashley Plum. I'm the executive director over at Check for a Lump. We are a small local breast cancer nonprofit. I'm also a breast cancer survivor, 7 years out. And we are absolutely in support of another location for Mint Dispensary. They have been a huge supporter of our organization and the community that we serve. The majority of the people that we serve are underserved with our free mammograms that don't have access to care. And, Mint has graciously offered their parking lots to host our mobile mammogram events to the people in the community where they can just walk up and get their mammograms. They also have hosted super survivors events. So those are for breast cancer survivors that come and they educate our survivors and anybody else that wants to come with them on the benefits of the medical cannabis and how it can help cancer survivors with their pain and their nausea that they experience daily for months on end. So, we really support having them there, especially in that such a need in that community, whereas the people in that community are having to leave Gilbert and to go to other locations to get what they need in order to endure cancer treatments and just be able to survive each day. And Mint's been supporting us since 2018. We've been they host the events that they host are really neat because they tour and they really teach the survivors and anybody else about the science behind the plants and what the benefits are. And then I've seen them firsthand spend at least an hour with a survivor going through all the things of what can help them. Any questions?
All right. Anything else? Any questions of the speaker by any of the board members? Right. Thank you very much and appreciate what you're trying to do. Good luck to you. All right. Next speaker I have is Michael Cacciardi, probably butchered that, who says he wishes to speak and is in support. Michael in the audience? Oh, sorry. No, I'm not used to the routing where people are going around behind. Sorry.
No problem. My name is Michael Cociardi. I am currently been with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for almost 18 years, and I am also on the board as a sergeant at arms with the Phoenix chapter of the Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. My experience, positive experiences in regards to cannabis and marijuana use. I also have a wife that worked for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office for almost 15 years, and she retired recently. And I have seen, and like my brother Joel talked about, you've seen the effects it has on people. whether it be at work, from what we've seen, and especially with my wife and how sometimes it affects you at home. My wife suffers from definite PTSD and anxiety from stuff with work, as well as we have a permanently disabled special needs daughter that has brought a lot of stressors. My wife just recently retired and has started using cannabis, and not only has it helped her immensely in regards to her stress and anxiety, her sleep patterns, it's also helped our marriage. Our marriage has been through the ups and downs in regards to each other and the stress, especially both being in law enforcement and having a special needs daughter. I also have recently, especially with my wife recently going into using cannabis, I visited it wasn't a mint dispensary, but I visited a dispensary, and I was blown away at the security levels it has. Just the fact that when you walk in, you're not walking right into the dispensary, you're walking into a lobby where there is a stringent protocol in regards to your ID, whether it's valid, and things like that. So even if you're well over the age of 21, a 70-year-old person could walk in there, and if their license is one day over expired, you're not allowed to go in and purchase. If your license is suspended, you're not allowed to go in and purchase. So the fact that there's those stringent rules and protocols in regards to going in put me at ease in regards to what it does for that area. You can't just go in, abuse the product, abuse the recreational use of it just to go in because you want to. It allows law-abiding citizens and those that have kept up in their obligation of society of having an updated driver's license or ID, whatever it may be, to go in there and do what they need to do for themselves, personally or medically. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the speaker by any of the board members? Thank you very much, and thanks to you and your wife for your service to the citizens of Maricopa County. The last speaker request card I have is from Jesse Martinez.
Good morning. My name is
Morning.
Jesse Martinez. I am the vice president for Shotgun Law Enforcement Motorcycle Club. About 30 years service for the Phoenix Police Department after I retired. My interactions with the Mint organization started when they provided product for one of our members who was dealing with cancerous brain tumors. They gave him a credit and basically helped him with products that would help alleviate the nausea and the side effects of the chemo and the radiation. So that helped him out a lot. I can't say it's cured him, but it has prolonged his life. And he's still around. He's still dealing with the cancer, but it has given him a better quality of life. So we're definitely grateful to Mint for that. My experiences prior to it being legalized here in Arizona was your standard enforcement. Now, prior to retiring, the policy with the city is that it's treated like a status offense now. You can get in more trouble for being in possession of alcohol than you can cannabis. Growing up, my grandmother used to put it in her rubbing alcohol and would rub it on her knees for her arthritis and on her hands as well. I take care of my elderly mother, and the nature of our consumption is I get her a pain cream for her ankle that she's had surgery on 3 times. She's not a big fan of pain pills, considering there's an opioid epidemic currently plaguing our country. So there's a lot of uneasiness when it comes to consuming pain medication. Mint offered and has an alternative, and it's a pain cream. So any consumption as far as our family is concerned is directly tied to a medicinal mindset, an alternative need, if you will. If there's any apprehension, or I would highly encourage anyone from the board here to take a tour so you could see the security features that these locations do have. You can't just walk in like it's a Circle K or a QT. You walk in, there's security right outside the front door. You walk in, you have to show a valid ID that says you're of age. And then they buzz you through. So there's no easy access to go inside these facilities. So those are some of the precautions, the windows, the walls, the cameras, lots of cameras. So I do want to emphasize that part to the board. And if there's any slight doubt in your mind, I would highly encourage to ask for a tour of their main facility there in Guadalupe and Tempe. That's the tour we did. And we've gotten into some of the other locations as well, similar setup. So it is a very, very safe location that's not just open to anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker by any board member? All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your service and best of luck with your mom. Is there anyone else in person here who wishes to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, I'll turn it over to David and our virtual team. David?
Yeah, I have Kyle online who wishes to speak. Kyle,
Go
you
ahead,
should
Kyle.
be able to go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Board. My name's Kyle Maris. I'm the Development Services Director for Gilbert. We appreciate being able to comment on this application. As Daniel had mentioned, and you can see from the letters in your packet, Gilbert opposes the variance request, the same as we did in September of 2022, when the same application was denied by the board. Also pointed out is the letter from Mayor Peterson in opposition of the request. The proposed establishment does not meet the minimum requirements of Maricopa County, nor would it meet any of Gilbert's standards. It is also evident in the staff report provided by county staff that the request does not meet the required findings of fact and should not be approved. Letters of support and speakers of support are not necessarily a finding of fact. So that is not one of the items that is being looked upon. To address Sonora Town Park, this is a town-owned park. It's slated for playground equipment renovations this year. The park also receives contracted maintenance regularly. During the most recent reporting period from October 1st, 2022 to September 30, 2023, Sonora Town Park had over 5,000 visitors with an average visit duration of 42 minutes. We know this because we take counts in our parks and also because we are going through our parks master plan update right now. This is an active facility. Bill is correct. There is not a parking lot there. This is a neighborhood park that serves Sonora Town, which is immediately to the west. There is also a canal that runs immediately to the south of this park and provides access to lots of folks. There is a demand for marijuana facilities, and we are aware of that. We do have one in the town of Gilbert, and we have had an excellent partnership with them over time. It is our position, though, that facilities should be located in areas that meet minimum standards that have been established by either the county or the town. So thank you again for the opportunity to express our opposition. We respectfully request the board deny the application as done before. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Any questions of the speaker from any board members? Member Clapp.
Yes. Question about the letter from the mayor of Gilbert. Was this a council action or is this a individual letter from the mayor?
It was an individual letter from the mayor. We didn't have timing opportunities set in place to bring it in front of our council. So the mayor spoke on behalf of the council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Cardin.
Thank you. Kyle, as I reread the letter, both from the principal planner as well as the mayor, the way, when I read them, it sounds like Gilbert is mostly concerned about precedent. Whether or not they annex this property ever isn't necessarily the main concern. It's a concern about precedent in general of violating the standards, at least that Gilbert has, if not that the county has. so that then other establishments would have an argument to come in there. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, I think some of it is about precedents, even though with variance requests, precedents aren't typically set. I think our major concern is when marijuana was legalized and dispensaries started to locate in different jurisdictions, there was certain rules and requirements and standards put in place across the valley. And I think our concern is those were set in place for a reason, and that we don't see reasons to vary from those standards as they were established. There are plenty of places in Gilbert where additional facilities could be located. There are plenty of facilities that are located on our borders. So it's really our focus to say if it doesn't meet the minimum requirements that were set out by the governing bodies, they should not be approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cardin. Any other board members have any questions? Yes, Member Person.
Thank you. Hi, Kyle. My question is about the maintenance of the park. I read the letter and you reiterated that there are some planned improvements, but I'm trying to reconcile this 5,000 people going over the course of the year with information Mr. Lally provided, which I understand was from a 2-week period, but still a number of visits and, you know, the pictures of the park being rather poorly maintained. So I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
Yes, thank you. I was surprised when I saw those pictures in the packet as well. This is, as you know, directly across the street from Gilbert's Town Hall. So we have plenty of eyes on the site and would not let it get into disrepair of that nature. So when I've been by that site, I have not seen it look in that condition. Again, I don't know when those pictures were taken, but I immediately went to our Parks and Recreation Director and asked questions about it. And that's when I found out that we do have a regular contracted maintenance schedule, and we are planning improvements to the playground equipment this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Person. Any other board members have any questions or comments of the speaker? All right, thank you very much, Kyle. We may have additional questions if you could hang on, please. David, are there others online who wish to speak on this item?
I'm not aware of anyone else online wishing to speak.
All right, with that said, Mr. Lally, did you want to make any rebuttal? Keep it quick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I will. I just want to address probably just the final comments made from the town and from Kyle Maris. You know, if you read, and I reread, I sat back down, I reread the letters from the mayor and from the planning department. And a lot of the letters, the intent of the letter is to spell out the differences between their code and your code. Well, that happens all over the valley. And so that in and of itself is not a reason to deny a variance. They also go into the fact that, hey, this was previously denied, so you should just follow the last denial. And I think we went through great lengths today to describe to you the additional evidence that we provided in this application, talking to what we believe is the most impacted party in this, which is a Montessori school. I know we get focused on a park today, but when we're talking about who's the most sensitive user that would be impacted here, it's the school. And it's the children that go to that school and the parents. And so this application is dramatically different. And I don't think that if we had just recycled the exact same application and said, well, a year's gone by, we can refile again, then I think the town's position of you should deny it because it was denied before has merits. And I think that's not what has happened here. We've done a lot of homework. We visited the site after receiving information last go around from Gilbert saying, yeah, it's an important park to us. So to address some of the other comments, the 5,000 visitors, we were not provided any evidence of how that was surveyed. I find it hard to believe there's no sign on there that says Town of Gilbert Park. There's no parking lot. I'm not sure how they surveyed 5,000 visitors. All I can tell you is we had one of our consultants visited the site 14 times during some of the best weather of the year, and there was 0 visitors there. And it's easy to say, but next year we're going to put some improvements in there. And if the weeds grow, we'll going forward, we'll maintain it. It's easy to say that. But when we put this application together, the end of last year and submitted it, that's what the park looked like. Those are the photos of the park when we submitted this application. And so it's easy for the town to try to rectify it today and say, well, no, hold on. We're going to really make this important in the future. That's not the historical nature of this park. They can't put a parking lot in there. They're not going to drive more visitors. It's also important to note that there's been a sign on this site twice in the last 2 years. Kyle says this is a neighborhood park. Well, letters went out, signs went out to the community. That particular neighborhood, not a single person commented from that neighborhood in terms of, I don't want this. This is our park in our neighborhood. This would be detrimental to our park in our neighborhood. And so I think that's noteworthy, that nobody from that neighborhood who most likely would be using it, because you can only walk up to this park unless you're going to park in front of someone's house. Nobody has complained about the application today. I think it's also noteworthy to know that Gilbert's separation standards, if you do find a piece of property that's zoned industrial in Gilbert, which there's information in our application to show that we can't find any, but if you found one, the separation in Gilbert is 1,000 feet. So today it's 1,500 feet in Maricopa County, and it's 1,000 feet in Gilbert. So they've even acknowledged the fact that some of these sensitive uses can be closer in their own town than your own code today. So I think your code is even more conservative. And if you think about the school, which again, I want us to focus on who is really going to be impacted, and it's the school. The school is in support, and we're from door to door 1,600 feet away. If we were in Gilbert, we would just have to be 1,000 feet away. So there's other things we can go into, Mr. Chairman, and if there's direct questions I can answer, but be happy to rest.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments or questions to the applicant? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it over to the board for discussion and or a possible motion. This is in District 1. Member Cardin, go ahead.
Chairman Loper, thank you. Just in a discussion, I don't want to make a motion yet because I imagine others may want to talk, but just my thoughts. I think I appreciate all the speakers that came. They actually very eloquent and gave great reasons as to why the benefits and even the safety of this sort of establishment. I'm still on the thought of, because the town of Gilbert opposes this, which I interpret to be they believe they're representing their community, who I think will really be affected by this. Not just the school and not just people that go to the park, but all the surrounding community. For me, that really just kind of causes me to think there's a really high hurdle here of really meeting the statutory test. And ultimately, as I look through it, I look at the staff's arguments or the staff's report, and believe in this case, mainly again because of the opposition from Gilbert, I would make a motion to deny, but I'm not doing that yet, wanting to hear from others.
Thank you, Member Cardin. Member Clapp?
Well, I have some comments to make, but we have a motion on the
No,
floor.
he did not make a motion. He
I'm
said he's
sorry.
not. Yeah,
Misunderstood, sorry. Okay, then I'm in support of this case, and let me tell you why. First of all, the town of Gilbert opposition is not official. It's a letter from the mayor, and a person in the planning department. It is not representative of the town of Gilbert, because it was not a council action. It's one person on the council writing a letter to us telling us that that person is opposed to this park. So I don't think we should be considering this a letter of opposition from the entire town of Gilbert. And then if you look at the park, which was part of their argument about being opposed to this, I was really curious as to what the park looked like, and I was happy to get the pictures that we got today to see that, in my mind, this isn't a park. This is open space. And they're trying to call it a park. Maybe they will designate it as a park at some point on their park map, but they don't today. And it looks to me like unkempt open space. So to say they are in the future going to make it more beautiful is nice, but today it looks to me like a piece of land that's not very well taken care of. So I don't consider it a park. As far as the distance from the school, as it's been pointed out to us, the 1,500 feet distance intersects the property at the school. And if you look at where the egress is on the property in the Montessori school, it's 1,600 feet from the distance from the dispensary. I also just want to note that I appreciate the thoughts and feelings of law enforcement about the use. The use is really not in question here. It's the distance that's the problem. The use is allowed in the zoning district, but the problem is distance from the school or from the park. So my feeling is in this case, I go on the side of reasonable regulation, that this is, in theory, at least 1,500 feet from the school. And the distance from the park is very questionable when I'm not even sure this truly is a park, even though the town of Gilbert says it is. So I would be in support of this project and will make a motion to that effect.
Thank you. Any other board members have any comments? I have some, but I'm going to wait till the end. Member Person.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I'm struggling with it. I personally don't have a problem with the use. And I agree with Member Cardin that there is a high bar for making sure that we are respecting the process and the requirements. But I also feel like the description of the park and the distance with the school, I feel like could be construed as a peculiar condition, and I'm inclined to support.
Thank you. Member Ward, do you have any comments this time?
I could definitely, I'm in favor of it, but my concern is, even though it was maybe the mayor writing on a personal note and the council person, but my feeling is also that Gilbert elected them. And so this is what Gilbert is asking for. So I am very, very, very undecided.
That's fair enough to say. Thank you, Member Ward. I have a few comments, and as I mentioned earlier, this is in District 1, and that is Member Cardin's district. So I'm a public planner. I've been a planner for most of my career, and at the time when medical marijuana came on board, there was a lot of fear with that particular use. And so there were these separation and protected uses, and they came up with different distances. Most of them really arbitrary at the end of the day. They weren't established by kind of canvassing. They were kind of followed after from other separation, from other protected uses, and what should we go forward with. And I feel like the medical marijuana became a non-issue. Then we went to recreational marijuana. Most ordinances were changed to simply remove the term medical. Not a lot was done with the distance and separation requirements, but again, those distances were kind of put out to be a protection with more or less arbitrary distances, but those protections have borne out to not be necessary. We heard from several people in law enforcement, military, correctional backgrounds that they participate with the operators of these. And so I just feel, and I've been consistent with other variance cases for marijuana uses, that it's really, to me, the characteristics of what's happening at a given site that should be paid attention to. Mr. Lally, the applicant, pointed out that the functional distance to the school is over 1,500 feet. And I look at that like, how do you really get there? Yes, people can walk there and they can bike there, and there's a lot of different ways, but the functional distance to get access to the school meets that criteria. So for me, that's a non-issue. When I look at the park, and it's not very well kept, but having worked in municipal government, I know that sometimes is the case. It's not mentioned on their park plan. It's not, it doesn't look to me like it's very well kept, at least at that snapshot in time. And clearly, at least again at that snapshot in time, it isn't well used. Who knows when the 5,000 people came or went. But the fact of the matter is that to get from the proposed dispensary to the park, you have to cross 2 major roadways. Depending on where you're coming from, you also have to cross a canal. There are uses in the vicinity that are not regulated that sell alcohol and a myriad of things that could be potentially more dangerous. So again, I support this application because I believe the characteristics of the site bear out that the normal measurements, distance, and the characteristics of those uses don't really lead to the need for those separation requirements. So again, I support this, and I'll turn it back to the board for discussion and or a motion. Oh. Member Cardin?
Chairman Loper, thank you. I do not disagree with anything that's been said. I think there's room to see this differently. It sounded to me like Member Clapp actually did make a motion to approve. And so I would be happy to wait for a second on that before we vote on it.
All right, thank you. I stand corrected. We have a motion for approval by Member Clapp. Is there a second? And then we'll turn it over to discussion. Hold on, Fern. Or you seconded it, Fern? We have a second for approval by Member Ward. Rosalie, if you please take roll call.
Member Cardin,
No.
Member Clapp,
Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson,
Yes.
Chairman Loper.
Yes.
Chairman, we have a motion for approval by a vote of 4-1.
Congratulations to the applicant and their development team. And I just had to point out, Fern, that's the first time I've seen somebody cringe so much making a positive motion or a comment or vote while doing this. We have no other items on the agenda, so we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.